You've been mentioning an impressive list of movie titles, and of course we know that the big Hollywood studios always tend to take take things as a whole, and often screenwriters complain about their ideas being destroyed by the studios. Can you say something about that? I mean, you've talked about that sometimes you have to take your name off. How often does that happen?
It doesn't happen often, but it happened recently in a particularly important film where we didn't like one version, and it's not like anyone cares except for us, but our brand, our name, it means something, and once you establish the brand, protecting it becomes very important. But as I said, we can't change the way Hollywood works. We do support a lot of independent films as well, so we try to work on both sides. But again, I don't think, I wouldn't put the same demands on a Hollywood film as I might put on an independent film. So I don't have, a film like, I probably shouldn't say this because scientists hated this film, but was it The Day After Tomorrow? Was that I don't have a problem with that film because, of course, it conflates everything, but it then becomes a basis for people to talk about what's wrong with that film. It gets a lot of attention. It gets people talking about climate change. And then I look at it as an opportunity rather than censoring efforts like that. Although, of course, we'd like to make a better film. But I don't think I guess I take a large tent approach, and it becomes an opportunity to have a bunch of climate scientists showing clips from the film and saying, well, that would never happen because, and explaining to people why. And it becomes much easier for people to understand and to take an interest in climate science, even if the films get it wrong, though of course we want them eventually to be able to get it right.
So even simplification is not a bad thing.
In some, depending on if it's a Hollywood disaster movie. Someone here mentioned, I think disaster movies are very good ways to get a lot of.
But even biopics tend to use simplification at one point or the other.
Yeah, I think.
But that's okay with you.
It's a case. I'd say no. It's case by case, and also we wouldn't have supported. See, Day After Tomorrow, I would not have given a grant to. So you have different standards. To be honest with you, we wouldn't have given a grant to Al Gore's film either because it wasn't scientifically, from a purely impeccable point of view. It was not. We have different standards for things we initially support as opposed to things you recognize after they come out. So the standards are higher. But I'm just saying, having films like that in the culture to talk about is okay. Compare it to other professions. The average, you see all these cop shows. 95% of police officers have never fired a gun, and they're very happy that they never fired a gun. So, in other words, television, films always exaggerate, always take extreme, heightened, dramatic examples. I don't think they, and so scientists, in a way, have to understand it's entertainment. It's whatever, people always take enormous license.
Gibt's noch weitere Fragen? Ja, hier.
Yeah, hi, I'm Vicky Dheer from Cause Entertainment in India. Do you guys actually get involved in taking content? For example, something might have worked really well as a stage play, and then taking it onto television or onto a film, onto a different platform. And the second part of the question is, have you guys got involved in anything in India at all at this point, or in Bollywood, apart from Basmati Blues?
Yeah, we absolutely, so let's take a play like Copenhagen, which we helped, we had nothing to do with commissioning it. Michael Frayn wrote it. We just helped bring it to America. It was very successful. It won the Tony Award. It ran for 2 years, huge success. I then took the play, Frayn adapted it, and turned it into a television show, a film that aired on PBS KCET Presents. So one broadcast of that play on PBS reaches many people, 2 million, as 2 years, and then it exists and you can show it over and over again. So we're interested in that kind of impact, and we often do that. So between our radio, somebody will hear something on the radio, do a play, we'll support the play, we'll then turn it into a TV documentary, do a book. So we're very interested in all the different iterations. Hopefully people like it enough that it gets support without us, but we often will see ourselves as a spur. In terms of India, we have 3. We have Basmati Blues, we have the Ramanujan, actually there are 2 Ramanujan projects. And then there's one shot in the, one of the 100,000 First Feature Awards went to a Indian student from NYU. It's taking place in the Kashmir, in that lake. It's about environmental pollution in the lake. And he's supposed to shoot as soon as things calm down in that area. So we have, there's been a lot of interest. And this is before Slumdog even, it was obviously, a lot of things were happening in that industry.
We are actually involved with one of the Ramanujan projects.
You are? Which one?
We'll talk about that.
Okay.
Are there further questions? Weitere Fragen? Yeah.
Excuse me, you've got to take the microphone, otherwise they cannot translate.
Okay. I come out? No. Okay. Hello, my name is Uta Schwarz. I'm working in the Federal Center for Health Education. I'm responsible for films on health education. And my question is, in the history of science, there is a new movement of a very critical perspective, looking on how science works and how the history of science works. In the list of the films you gave us, there are a lot of historical biopics, I would say, maybe the majority. How would you explain this? Maybe historical biopics are, let's say, easier to discuss on contemporary political agendas, and how this, let's say, critical perspective of history of science goes in the development of the scenarios of the films. I hope I could make me understandable.
Well, first I would say you're right. There is you could say a large number of biopics. I think a number of reasons. One is that it's easier for the film students, a lot of them are scripts that come, to get the science right and to be comfortable with science. Through their entry point is a human life. And so you start caring about that person, then it seems if that person was doing science or math, it's much more comfortable. Often, a lot of the scripts we get, first of all, people tend to go towards science fiction, which that's one of the things we don't support. Although occasionally, some exceptions that we'll make because some part of it is more accurate. But on the whole, we don't want science fiction, which is what where they tend to go. And so biopics become a relatively, not an easy, but an access point for a lot of screenwriters. The other thing to say, though, is the biopic is much maligned. I mean, if you think, some people, arguably the greatest film ever made, on every top 10 list, is usually Citizen Kane. That's a biopic. There's a lot of, and there's many, many examples like that. A lot of people like stories of individual lives. I mean, they constantly, Beautiful Mind was a biopic. La Vie en Rose, nothing to do with science. I mean, those films, are perennials and they do very well. So I'm comfortable, I think we're still in the early stages. I don't want to say we're pioneers, but we're in the early stage of this revolution. It's going to take 50 years. I mean, I predict that in 1,500 years, no one will believe that a foundation had to go around offering money, bribing people to basically make films about life. I mean, science technology, it's such an artificial division. I mean, you're just saying, what is it? You're saying, can you tell me 5 minutes you spent today where technology doesn't come into your life? I'm speaking through a microphone, there's lights that came through everything is technology around us. So it's really just opening their eyes up to what is there. I think it's a much broader concept than it's being understood. But I would agree with you, there is a preponderance, and we encourage, for example, comedy. I'd like to see a lot more comedy. I wish people would, understand there's The Big Bang is a half-hour comedy series in America that's been very successful. And years ago, I approached the creators of Frasier, which is another very successful comedy in America about a psychologist, and tried to get them to do a scientist. And they were very tempted, but they made so much money, were so successful, I couldn't get them to do one more show. But they understood, they got it in 5 minutes. And I think there are enormous room for comedy, because there's so many stereotypes here and send-ups, and I wish people would take those approaches. And I think you have to be more comfortable with something. Comedy is actually a very challenging form, and you have to really know it. So, I mean, a filmmaker, for example, whose work I sometimes point to, Charlie Kaufman, has done a couple of, he's satirical, he's a very, very smart person. And I point to Human Nature, which is a kind of really sharp satire, but it's so smart about science. Arguably, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind also, which he wrote. has to do with scientific ideas. So I think as people get more comfortable, they may be able to branch out. But in the early stages, I would say the biopic we're going to still see a lot more of it, and it's okay. I mean, we're, especially the women scientists, those stories I think are very powerful, and we have a bunch of them in the pipeline that we hope will come out. And, we're talking to people like Lifetime, which people think of as a women's, channel, and they're interested, and we think that's great. It's, some people say that's dumbing down. And we say, no, that would be wonderful. Let the women who normally want to hear about Coco Chanel, let them see a biopic about Hedy Lamarr or about Lisa Meitner and get excited about these women's lives and see them as examples to be emulated, or, to just enlarge their notion of what it is that women can do.
I'm just wondering about the Big Bang Theory, because the young scientists there are always living up to each and every cliche, ridiculing themselves, but that's okay for you as well.
Oh, but I think they've done actually a lot of, I'm not an expert on that show, I don't watch it regularly, but I think scientists are quite happy with that show, and there's been, as usual, it actually has made I think a more affectionate portrait of what it is that these scientists do. I think anything that brings us closer to more intimate contact.
They are only humans too.
Yeah. I'd like to see more shows like that, rather than, I think the perfect is the enemy of the good, especially at the beginning, is just get more, show them that material can be worked, and then you'll get the perfect show. I mean, Numbers is also a very interesting example. I think Numbers, in some sense, is a successor to CSI because it's pushed the envelope again. I don't know is that shown in Germany? Is that? It
has been, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, where they really take 5 minutes out to explain some, mathematical concept in the middle of, getting the bad guy, and that show is done very well rating-wise. It kind of saved Friday night for CBS. It was very successful. After first, everybody said who's going to watch that?
Unfortunately, it wasn't in Germany.
No.
No. Wir hatten noch eine Frage da hinten, glaube ich. Ja, genau, in der letzten Reihe.
Actually, I have two questions. How many people are working in your organization? And could you let us know, you mentioned that you're interested in promoting innovative science. So how is the process of judging that? What are your criteria?
When you say
promoting innovative science, if I understood it correctly. So what are your, in the selection process of what projects you are going to give a grant, etc. How do you judge?
In public understanding, or in the other science that we do?
In the grants that you are giving.
For media, though, for film and TV.
Yeah, right.
Oh, I don't think it's innovative science. It's innovative art. So it's an arts program. So the film needs to be, or the screenplay, or the television. The science can be something that's a recognized field. I mean, the science has to be real. It shouldn't be science fiction. It shouldn't be imaginary, and it shouldn't be fanciful. But as long as the science is accurate, and so the criteria is more artistic, though it needs to meet certain scientific threshold. I think our science programs, like I mentioned, Census of Marine Life, Sloan Digital Sky Survey, theoretical neurobiology, there we look for, DNA barcoding. We do a lot of cutting-edge science. But I think on the public understanding, there's a lag, and we're not even going to try to put, occasionally, things get picked up. But we're much broader in accepting, because people don't understand very basic ideas. And so films that can help you get there, we welcome. Well, the first part of your...
How many people?
Oh, we're relatively small. I mean, there's about 28 people at the Sloan Foundation, and in my program, there's really me, and I now have an assistant. They finally let me hire. We're very lean. So we really do it ourselves. We go out and we don't really do it. We find the people to make it happen. And we just do some quality control to make sure that we don't allow things that I'd be embarrassed for you to ask me about. Though there's been a couple of borderline cases.
I guess we really can learn a lot from your programs. So thank you very much for being here, Doron Weber.